Howdy y'all, Fuzzy Biker here in the Fuzzy Biker Garage. We just took that beautiful hot rod Himalayan all the way across Nebraska into over to Hot Springs in South Dakota, up into Wyoming, back into South Dakota again, and back into Wyoming so we saw the Devil's Tower, I think it was. Then we took a long road all the way back across South Dakota on I-90, if you can believe that, on a Himalayan, down in Nebraska, and then we took the Highway 12 through what we called Nebraskan Alps, the Alps of Nebraska, and that was kind of an interesting ride, and I wouldn't call them the Alps, it was pretty close, but anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the motorcycle, I'm going to talk about the ride, I'm going to talk about the accessories on the bike itself, then we'll talk about gear, the gear I wore when I was on this trip and how that affected the ride, talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the camping gear I took along. This is my whole camping setup right here. This is the bike as I drove it in. I got back 2 nights ago. I drove it in here and I parked it, and I haven't really done anything anything to it except I took a little bit of food out of the this one pack over yonder. So the bike, this is how it is after we rode about 1,700 miles. So it was really quite a ride, And then we'll talk about what we're going to do in the future. So beginning with the bike, it's a 411cc Royal Enfield Himalayan. It's air-cooled. It's about 24 horsepower. It's got a single overhead cam engine with two valves, two-valve cylinder head. The motor is bone stock. Haven't done anything to the exhaust or the cams or the fuel system. It's got a stock air filter in it. Everything is like that. The bike now has about just over 28,000 miles on it. It's about 2.5 years old, a little over 2.5 years old. And it's by far my favorite motorcycle. I know I say that about all my motorcycles, but this motorcycle and this motorcycle are the two that I just couldn't live without. If I had to get rid of something, it would not be that or that. It'd be hard. It would be a hard choice. It's got a 58-inch wheelbase. I think I'll put the millimeters down below for that. The big thing about this motorcycle, beside the engine, it's got a 5-speed gearbox, by the way, 24 horsepower, 24 foot-pounds of torque, about 32 newton meters. The other big thing about the bike is the suspension. It's got this wonderful 21-inch front tire, and we'll talk about some of the things we did with that beautiful front tire and how well it worked. It's got 41 millimeter tubes. There's about 7.9 inches of travel here. That's about 200 millimeters. Jump into the rear end. It's a monoshock with a link system on the bottom, down there. And it's about 7.1 inches of travel in the back, about 180 millimeters. Look at all that South Dakota dust on there, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Brakes on the hot rod. It's got a 300 millimeter disc on the front. Check it out. With a dual piston vibri, and on the rear, I think it's a 240 on the rear with a single piston vibri. Look at how filthy that thing is. Just check out these bugs through here. Anyways, it's quite a bike. Seat height in stock form is about 31.5 inches or about 800 millimeters. This one has about an 840 millimeter seat height because we put the Seat Concept tall seat on it right there. And that really made the trip. We'll talk about that too in a little bit. Wet weight on this motorcycle with a full tank. Oh, fuel is 4 gallons, by the way. I think that's about 15 liters. Wet weight on this hot rod in stock form, without any accessories, would be about 440 pounds. They say 199 kilograms, but I think that's actually about 200 kilograms. It's a very stable bike. It runs down the road pretty well. It'll go over anything because of the suspension, geometry, and all that neat stuff. And it's just kind of a do-it-all motorcycle. It'll street bike, it'll mountain road, it'll gravel road, and we did it all with this, by the way. Accessories I've added to this particular motorcycle. We'll start at the front. I raised the front tire here, the front fender actually. Yeah, the reason I did that is right after I got the bike, I hit a mud road, loaded up the front tire, left the front fender with mud, and the whole thing froze up. Moving upwards, I put this guard on the headlight. I put this gigantic windshield on here, and look at that. I mean, look how much crap is on there. That is a Cal-Sci windshield, California Scientific. It's actually made in Missouri, but check the size of that thing out. Probably the biggest one I've ever seen on a Himalayan. Added these hand guards, put these mirror extenders out to move the mirrors outward. Those are stock mirrors. And I have these tire pressure sensors on there. that hook to, see if I can get it come to life here, this thing right here. Oh, there it is. That's my current tire pressure. Jumping to the rear, I put these small racks on the back because I wanted small bags in the rack. And then I added these nifty little bags that are absolutely stuffed right now. I still haven't emptied them. It's got the stock rack on the rear. There's a little rack on the rear back here. That's dead stock. I added this wonderful Bigfoot on there. I added the foot as it comes stock is very small, almost useless in the dirt. So I added this thing here, which is about this big. And that was all right, but it wasn't big enough, so I made this Bigfoot for it. And that is so big I can stand this thing up in a puddle of water, by golly. Did I mention the seat right? Yes, I did. Jumping up here, I already talked about this. I recently added the Garmin. I think that's called a Zumo 396, and it actually works very well. This was the old mount. I haven't taken it off yet because in case this new mount didn't work out, I want to be able to remount it. And I think I already talked about the handguards. The handguards actually work really well. So the handguard's only attached at the end, and you think, well, that's just not going to be strong enough. Well, I did drop this bike, I don't know, a year or so ago, right on this handguard. If you look right here, you can see the scratches did not break, and it protected just like it was supposed to. Love this motorcycle, just love it. Like I said, I've got 28,000 some miles on it. Just a beautiful thing. Jumping up to the dash, let's take a look at that real quick. So when I got the bike, I felt like the dash was antiquated at that time. You know, it looks very old school. Look how much dirt there is on there. You know, it's very plasticky and gaugey, and you know, analog, big old analog speedometer over here, big old analog tachometer over here, a compass that never worked, fuel gauge right there, analog fuel gauge. And down here, it's got an always visible odometer, which says 28,341 miles at this point. Down here is a trip A, trip B thing, an always visible gear indicator, always visible clock. And what else can I show you? Alternator light and ABS light, engine light, dedicated turn signal lights. And I don't know what else is back there. Oh, you can shut off the ABS on the rear by pushing this button here, and that'll turn off the ABS on the rear. It's got ABS front and back. This is the wiring for this Zumo up here. This is a little pack that I keep my aspirins and allergy medicine in, and just little doodads, stuff to travel with. I've never put bags on the front. These racks come standard with the Himalayan, and I've just never put racks on there. Look at that headlight. Look how filthy that is. I'm kind of proud of that, actually. A little bit about let's see, what do I got on my list here? The gear I used on this trip, the two things that are just key, three things actually, the gloves. I wore my ventilated Royal Enfield gloves, top-notch gloves. I wore those almost the whole time. Next to that, I wore my Royal Enfield, I call them my mid-weather gloves, or Alpine Star Royal Enfield thing. They've got this Duraliner or something like that in there. They're good for weather. I think they're good from 45 degrees on up. They're not a gauntlet glove. I did bring my gauntlet gloves with me. They're in there, but I did not use those on this ride. Gear that's really important that I had, the best thing, two best things besides the glove would be the Nervik jacket, Royal Enfield Nervik jacket. I have the liner out of this. It's actually in the bottom of this bag. On this trip, I did not have to use it. Last trip, the week before, I did have to use it, and I'm very happy I had it. So this is a complete weather system for the body. It's armored. I should have it out, but like I said, I haven't unpacked the bag yet. Oh, here's all kinds of information. Certified jacket, CE certified. The whole jacket is CE certified. It's got Cordura fabric, CE protection. It's got CE1 armor in the back, actual armor in the back. It's got CE2 armor in the shoulders and in the elbows, and that's important because I broke my elbow in one of my wrecks years ago, a few years back, and I think a jacket like this might have saved me. But when you put this jacket on, it's really a weather size. It's got these great big vents in the front and the back and the sleeves, and you know, I wear this jacket from 45 degrees all the way up to about 85 degrees. Over 85 degrees, it starts getting a little warm, then you want to take it off. And I'm working on a solution for that. I'm trying to find myself a jacket that I like for when it's that warm. You know, something that when I take this off, I put that one on. Maybe something that would work from, let's say, 80 degrees on up and still give me rain protection. This jacket is proven in the rain. I've driven a couple hundred miles in the rain with this jacket on. It does stay dry. When you have to zip everything up, but it will stay dry. And when you do put the vent in, or the liner in, It's good all the way down to at least 45 degrees, probably more if you have the right clothing underneath it. Just, it's got this reflective Royal Enfield on the back. Just love that thing. Other thing that's really worth mentioning, and this is a really big deal, and I need to do a video just on this helmet. This is a very expensive, showy Neotech 2 helmet. I just got this. I took a trip down to the Flint Hills 3 weeks ago, I think it was, and my HJC helmet, which I just love, it seemed tight and it had hot spots, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a lot of riding this year. I'm going to spend a lot of money and get myself a good helmet. Got it. And I wanted a modular, which this is. I wanted something with a sunshade, which this has. If I can get it to come open here. Yeah, there it is. So I've got this for controlling the sun right here. The modular, so it flips up. It's got this really good wind protection system all the way around the bottom. It's a real snug fit. Very comfortable interior. It's got vents that actually work. This is that's closed, that's medium, that's wide open, And then on the chin, this is open, this is closed. Push it up like that, it's closed. The other thing I wanted smooth action. So that's now closed. That's open, closed. And my other helmet, it was click. You had to really slam it to get it to close. So this helmet, one thing I'd say right away, it's probably about a 4-pound helmet. It weighs about the same as my HJC, maybe a little less, I'd say, but it's very aerodynamic. The wind flows around it very well. It feels like you have a very small light helmet on because it's just that good. I think they spent a lot of time figuring out how to make this slick, and it works pretty good even when you're moving your head around. The other thing is it's got a non-standard shield on it. It's a very good sealing shield. It's got this little lip on the top here. I wish this was centralized. I think the Neotech 3 is centralized, this little lever here. And it's just an excellent thing. But the key thing is it's quiet, it's comfortable, and it's something that you can wear. I've got 3,000 or 4,000 miles on it now. It's something that you can wear all day long, day after day after day. I wore that helmet from Sunday to Thursday, and I wore it all day long. I wore that thing for 1,725 miles or something like that, and it performed flawlessly. I wore it on the interstate. I wore it on 2-lane blacktop. I wore it going through Omaha. I wore it we did a day of nothing but gravel and rock and mountain climbing with the bikes, and it just performed. So that helmet that was equally important to this trip, the helmet and the jacket and the gloves, as this motorcycle was. It really is that big of a deal. The gear, good gear. I know they say this all the time, but good gear makes the trip. That is absolutely true. That gear made this trip that much better. Jumping over to what I took, this is my whole camping setup here. So quickly, in here is my fluffer for my jacket, my liner for my Neotech jacket or my Nervic jacket, and 2 pairs of gloves. And then another pair of gloves is laying out, but that's what's in here. I also have a charging block, to charge my phone. So I let that charge with the motorcycle. It plugs into the little battery tender cable. I just ran it up here for now. It's temporary. I got that in there charging during the day, and then at night I take that out and I use that to charge my phone. So that's what's in that one. Jumping over here to this one, on the other side, I had helmet wipes. These are the unsung hero of the trip, by the way, the helmet wipes. You get these bugs like this, and you get these out, and you use them to clean your helmet, and they're awesome. They're cheap. They're like $2.50 at Walmart. And I brought 2 packs. Bottled water. I've got coffee, the all-important coffee. I had food items in there, snacks, hand snacks, and things like that. Jumping over here, I have in this bag my tent. My sleeping bag, I think, is in there at this point. And maybe a chair. My chair is in there also. I wanted my air mattress to be in there, but my air mattress had developed a leak in the last trip. I ordered a new one, hadn't showed up yet, so I had to buy myself this at Walmart. If you ever get a chance to go on a long trip and sleep on a 1/2-inch thick rubber mat, just don't do it. Just don't do it. So I got back and my new one had arrived. Sleeping Go, I don't know. Sleeping O, I don't know what it's called. That's what it's supposed to be. People on the internet either loved it or hated it, but it was cheap. It's supposed to be really durable. It's supposed to be 2 inches thick, and certainly long enough and wide enough. So that's going to be my new mat. I'll let you know how that works. I'll do a video on gear, but I think my tent is Klaus Nature 2 tent, very nice tent. I really enjoy that. I've used it now like 5 or 7 times, something like that. It just, well, on this trip I used it 3 times, and I think I used it twice before this. That'd be 5 times. Easy to set up, very, very roomy, very wide top. You know, I was telling a friend of mine I could sit in it with my chair if it was raining outside and, you know, work on the computer or do something like that if I had to. Chair, I can't remember the name of my chair. I've got one of those little folding chairs that pull out of a bag, you know, like this big, and it just folds in, you know, folds up in a second. And really cool. The sleeping bag is a Mallow-Me bag, very light, $25 bag. I love it. Works good. And here I've got clothes and miscellaneous things like that, and maybe more medical supplies. And then same in here, I've got toothpaste, toothbrush, things like that. Food items were in there, non-perishable kind of food stuff. So really that's my whole kit. And my goal is to get rid of this, obviously, to get that in there, and maybe get something where I can use this bag, a bag like this inside this bag. So on the back of the bike I'd have this, and that's it. I'd also like to get a better net system. This one is very durable, and it's actually worked so far with this whole load. I drove all the way across, you know, Nebraska, South Dakota, and a little bit of Wyoming, and then back with that. So it does work, but I'd like something a little more robust, I think. It did very well. I was very impressed with that whole thing. Just an amazing thing. So about the trip, we took off Sunday morning, about 8 o'clock, I suppose. I filled up, went down the street to the gas station, filled up, and we headed out. We drove across Nebraska. You know, we had the hour time difference, and I think it was 12 hours. It might have been 14. I can't remember. From here to there, it was 570 miles. For me, my buddy Gary and his Tiger, he rode with me. He had to drive 40 miles to get here. So it's 560, 570 miles to get to Hot Springs, which is where we got a KOA there. Anyway, the ride up there, we went through, we left here, took back roads to Omaha, buzzed through Omaha on a Himalayan. This is all a Himalayan, by the way. And it did just fine. It really did. And this is a bone stock Himalayan, engine-wise, power-wise. You know, buzzed through Omaha, did back roads. We went to Wahoo, Nebraska. Wahoo, Nebraska. There is such a place. I may have to take a trip out there just to do a video on that town. But anyway, went through on Highway 2, went through the sand dunes, the beautiful sand dunes. It's really funny, is the week before I just done the same ride, and it was just equally exciting this time. From there we buzzed up, we went all the way to, we were going to go to Alliance, but we didn't go to Alliance. We cut short from Alliance. We found this road on the map. It was I think it was called 250, and it was one of these things, you know, and it looked very rural, and it was. And we took that road up towards, I can't remember the name, Chandler or something like that was the name of the town. And that road was a real treat. There were all kinds of little lakes. We saw that on the map. There were all kinds of little lakes around it, little ponds, lots of wildlife that you wouldn't normally expect. Very just beautiful, different view of the hills. I mean to tell you, it was a real treat. And I'm sure that the sandhills are full of other roads like that. And I really believe that's the bike to go back and explore it on. I might just do that at some point, but we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So that was day one. We got to the KOA, got ourselves set in. We got 3 nights there. KOAs are great because they got laundry facilities, they got showers, they got clean bathrooms, they had breakfast there at that particular one. Some of them have all-day restaurants. And of course, being in Hot Springs, there's all kinds of food options and things like that. You know, and Hot Springs is kind of a neat little town, by the way, if you ever get a chance to get there. So the next, you know, we bedded down, got up the next morning, hopped on the old hot rods. He was on his Tiger. He's got a, it's not the Rally, it's the other model, the GT maybe. And that thing just was a real sweetheart of a motorcycle, just a real lovely bike, you know. And anyway, so we hopped on that. We went to a park called Wind Cave Park, and you drive over the cattle gates, and it says, "Caution, large animals, buffalo are dangerous," something like that. And you drive in there, and there are literally buffalo roaming around, and antelope, and prairie dogs, and it's just, it's kind of like, I'm guessing it's kind of like it was back in the day without the roads, you know, but with the roads. And you drive through the main road, and then there's a couple of offshoot roads, and we took all those little roads and kind of wandered around. A lot of Subarus, by the way. Why is that? What's the deal with the Subarus? And so we had, you know, that was day one. We did that for a while. We kind of did a little bit of Custard Park, just a little bit of it, just the edges of it. I've been to Custard State Park before. I think it's actually a national park. We went back to town for lunch, And on the map, we were looking around, we looked around town, we could see way up on the hill, there were the towers. It was the highest point. So we decided, we found that on the map, and we buzzed over there, and there was a gate, but it was open. It was open. It was unlocked. And we took that. That road was rocky, upright, curvy, twisty. You know, it was all those things. And Himalayan buzzed right all the way up to the top. It was like a billy goat, you know, going up there for some grass to eat. It just loved it. It just loved it. And you know, I didn't mention the tires, and I think that's had a lot to do with it. This has these Dunlop Trail Max Mission tires on the back. I've wore out a whole set of these on the rear already. I think this is the second one on the rear. I think I got 15,000 on the first one. And these tires are like rocks. They just do everything. And this one's got 15 or 16,000 on it in the front. And it's still way off the wear indicators. So they're excellent tires. Anyway, the bike just climbed up that hill like nothing. And then in the afternoon, we found these wide open prairie areas. I mean, we were out there. I'll put some pictures up here. And clover, for as far as you could see, you know, can only imagine. It was like an ocean of clover and prairie grass. It was just amazing. Quite the sight. Went home, had a good meal, hit the sack. Next morning we got up, and that was going to be that'll be day 3, right? So yeah, that was going to be our gravel day. And Gary was he was my nav system. He knew where everything, he'd been there many times before. He knew where everything was. And so he took us, you know, we hopped on the old motorcycles, and that day we put like 175 miles on, and about 35 of that was pavement. The rest of it was, you know, 140 of that was all gravel or rock or whatever. And we toured around and blasted around, and you know, these gravel twisty, their version of gravel, which is very rocky. You know, there's cows on the road. There was, you know, big bluffs as high, just, you couldn't see to the top kind of stuff, you know, and just amazing scenery. And then we got to the spot, and he said, "Follow me." And we, you know, the road got super rocky, a little tiny bit technical, quite a lot of fun, you know. And we actually crossed into Wyoming. We're in South Dakota. We crossed into Wyoming, and then right back in, and we ended up on this bluff. And we'd taken our lunch with us. We'd gotten some Subways, and it looked into Wyoming. It also looked into South Dakota. But we looked for our lunch. We sat on the edge of this bluff. And we had a couple 100 square mile view of just the most beautiful, I'll put some pictures of it here, beautiful scenery. And that's where we had our lunch, $1 million view. You know, it's just, you know, it's the kind of place where you check for rattlesnakes for sure. Well, there was a mountain ranger tower right up the road there. So after lunch, we went over there, and it was a big old tower. And there was a bathroom there. Gary went over to the restroom, and the lady yells down, "Hey, come on up." So I yelled back, "Where's the elevator?" And she goes, "What? Ha, 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 come on up." Okay, so we did. It was 90 steps up there. We get all the way to the top. It's a little room. It's 10 by 10. Gal up there with 2 big dogs. There's no room for anything. There's all kinds of equipment and stuff. Gary comes up behind me, and what a view. And she told us all kinds of neat and interesting things. And yeah, it was quite a treat, and we really appreciate her showing us that stuff, you know. And that bike, like I said, that bike just took us right up those roads. So we left there and did a little more exploring, and we ended up in Wyoming on these, it's called the Red Rim Canyon or something like that. It was National Forest, Black Hills National Forest. And we spent the afternoon in there, and just on and on and on. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. At one point, my Garmin said we were over 7,000 feet. You know, so I think Hot Springs is 32 or 34, so we really climbed. And where I'm standing right now, where we started, is about 1,200 feet, maybe less than that. So, you know, a lot of anyway, that was a great day too, you know. Went home, had a meal that couldn't be beat, you know how that goes. And then the next day we got up and we drove all the way to the Devil's Tower. Had to think about that one. And beautiful scenery, had to stop in one of the, you know, we decided to leave early. We got our stuff all packed up. It was like 6:26 when we hopped on the bikes. They don't serve breakfast there until 7, so we thought, well, we're going to get something on the road. It's about 11 o'clock before we got breakfast. And we actually did get breakfast. Stopped in this little restaurant in some little town and had a great breakfast. Got back on the road. We were just about there, like 30 miles from Devil's Tower. About 16 miles away, we could see it. And it was just humongous from 16 road miles away. I don't know what line of sight was. Got up close to it. Wow, just amazing. You know, went in there by the park. We didn't go into the park, but there was like a KOA, and they had a little ice cream shop there, so we had ice cream. And then, that was the conclusion of our trip, really. At that point, it was the ride home. And for some reason, we got the crazy notion that we were going to take, the wind was at our back, we were going to take I-90 for 100 miles or so. We ended up running I-90 for probably 250 miles. And, 250 miles on I-90, Interstate 90, the longest, straightest, most boring road in the world on a Himalayan. And this thing just ate it up. Our speeds were about 65 miles an hour. Like I said, the wind was at our back. When we got to a point, turned south, ended up in Valentine, got a hotel. So that was the end of the South Dakota. Now we're in Nebraska again. And woke up the next morning, refreshed, had the hotel night, and Highway 12 starts in Valentine. And that was one of the things we wanted to do. We wanted to see the Alps of the Nebraskan Alps. So we rode that all the way across Nebraska. And it was scenic in parts, and a lot of parts it was just dead flat. And kind of funny, dead flat, here comes a big old tumbleweed running across the road, and Gary on his Tiger, he was the lead. He hit that, and it just exploded into a million pieces. Later, I was pulling chunks of it out of the front of his bike. But anyway, we got to the other end of the Nebraska, and a town, Niobrara, I think it was called. And that got interesting. There was the Mormon Canal. There was very interesting scenery. It was very, very, very pretty. Something interesting to throw in about this, throughout Nebraska and parts of South Dakota, like gas pumps had no pay at pump. You just went up, you pumped your gas, and you went inside and paid. One of the places we went to, the gas pump actually had rotary dials, not digital. That was kind of interesting, I think. But really, what a trip, what a trip. So let's talk about the future of this. So I'm going to go back. I'm supposed to go to Colorado in a couple days. I'm going to go there for a week, visit a friend up there. We're going to buzz around, and I think we're going to take the super meter over yonder. I'm going to give it a valve job tomorrow, and then a valve adjustment. Then we'll go do that. Then I think what I'm going to do actually is go back to South Dakota. A friend of mine sent me a link to BDRX, I think, or something like that. He had done a year or two ago. And he said it was amazing. I looked it up, and I've been reading, watching videos on it. It is really amazing. And I think this bike would do it beautifully, and I'm going to do that. This has got to be my favorite all-around motorcycle. Other things I'm going to talk about as far as what I want to do for gear-wise. I'm thinking about getting some bigger bags. I open these up here to get some battery out. And like I said, I want to consolidate the gear. As far as equipment for the bike goes, I really don't think there's much I want to do to it. I'm going to clean it up tomorrow, most likely take it to the car wash. I think I want to take the axle off, or not the axle. I'm going to take this pivot point off and re-grease that. It's 28,000 miles on it. The chain we redid a while back, but I'll clean that all up. I'm going to check my rear brake pads. I've never changed the brake pads on this bike, and I think it's probably due. I checked the front ones maybe 5,000 miles ago, 3,000 miles ago, and they were actually just fine. The back ones are getting low, but I think I'll probably put some new back ones on there. I don't really think there's much to do to this thing. It just does it all. I love this motorcycle. Will I get the new one when the new Himalayan comes out? That's the big question, I really would like to have the new one. The limitations of this motorcycle on this trip. What were the limitations of this bike? That's really an important question, and I've been thinking about that a lot. There was really only one. The big one was speed, 60, 65 miles an hour. If you're going into a wind, 60. If you're going, without a wind, it'll go 75 if you want 80, but really consistent long-running speed, 65 miles an hour. You really don't want to do much more than that. It's a single-cylinder, large air-cooled single-cylinder engine. But out around the hills, and it's got loads of torque. It's got plenty of power. It's not a race bike. The Tiger was certainly walking away from it whenever he wanted to, but we did very well together. Riding as a team, and he never really had to wait for me. If he left me going up a hill, I'd catch him going down the hill, and he held his speeds to 65, I suppose, on the two-lane blacktops. Like I said, when we did the interstate, we held speed at 65, and I did fine with the wind at my back. But no, top speed is a real limitation on this bike. Big advantages this bike would have over a Tiger, and this is a real one. This is an absolutely real one. When we went up the first long, steep climb up the Rock Hills, it was worrisome for Gary. That he was afraid of hurting his motorcycle. I really believe. Maybe I'm wrong, Gary. Let me know what you think. But he has a very beautiful, nifty, loaded down Tiger, and he had big bags on it, hard bags, and just a gorgeous machine. And this motorcycle new costs less than his would cost used. I paid $5,500 for this thing 2.5 years ago. And because of that, I think that's an actual feature of this motorcycle, is that you don't have to worry about destroying your beautiful, fancy, expensive, top-of-the-line bike. You know, what do you lose because you buy a bike in that price range? Well, you don't get heated seats, you don't get cruise control, you don't get heated grips. You can add the heated grips. You know, you don't get a big, powerful engine, but you get a powerful enough engine. You get loads of torque. You get this flexible, usable, do-it-all motorcycle. And I really think that is a big deal. So future trips back to North Dakota, back to South Dakota. I'd like to go into Wyoming here soon. I've got trips planned to Kansas again, down to the Flint Hills of Kansas, back into Missouri. Exploring what's out east. You know, there's some things out there. And I've got other bikes. Like I said, I want to put a bunch of, we're going to take that bike over there, the Super Meteor, to Colorado in a couple days, actually. There's my Moto Guzzi. We're not going to take that anywhere. I'd like to go, that's my fun around town bike. That's my emotional release bike. How's that? Emotional support bike. I'd like to take this on a trip like across Iowa. And that's a 350 Classic, very comfortable, you know, so I got back from my big ride, you know, 1,725 miles. The next morning I got up, and before I even got out of bed, before I had coffee, I knew I wanted to take this for a ride. And I got it out, and I was going to ride around town, and I did ride around town. Next thing you know, I was going to the next town, and before the day was over, I had 200 miles on it, and I was just, you know, through Iowa fields and hills, and, you know, looking at the beautiful grass and the beautiful, you know, the farms and the, you know, tree-lined waterways and just all that neat stuff, and just had a good day. Just had a very good day. It was a beautiful, got home ride kind of bike. But all right, I'm really rambling, aren't I? I want to thank Baxter Cycle for making sure this thing, I took it into them, you know, they looked it over before I went. They always make sure everything works right for me. I'm really happy about, you know, they do that for all their customers, you know. They give a lot of support, and they're worthwhile. If you're looking for a new or used Royal Enfield, Triumph, classic British bike of any type, need parts, accessories, thingamajigs, doodads, gloves, gear. And I got my Neotech helmet over there. I've got my HJC helmets over there. I got these bags over there, these 2 bags. You know, I love those bags, by the way. I got the Nervig jacket, the Royal Enfield jacket. I got all my gloves there. You know, they can help you out. And I think I'm going to talk to them about bags for this too, because they've got some really good options. But, you know, I want to thank those guys for the support. And they make trips like this, you know, possible. And I'm actually, when I leave, I'm going to take this in and see if they can give it a looking over, you know, just kind of check it out. But those guys are great. Baxter Cycle, awesome. If you go there, go to Baxter Cycle. You know, if you can't get to the mighty Metropolis of Marnie to see Baxter Cycle, go to baxtercycle.com. Check it out. They got all kinds of bikes there. And by the way, they ship nationwide, just about everywhere. If you need a bike, check them out. They can give you a good deal. And I'm giving them a good plug because good people there, you know. Now, life is good. It is late. It did rain all morning. I did ride a bunch of bike today, so I'm not going to ride a bunch tonight. But, you know, if the weather's good where y'all are at, got a bike like this, like that, or something else, get yourself out there and ride, my friends. Wahoo! Yippee-yi-yay! Yippee-yi-yo! Down the road we go. Beautiful, beautiful machine.